Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of All In with Love Playground Conversations. I am your host, James Gardner. This is my little playground, my little sandbox, an ode to little Jimmy, where I sit down with some amazing people and have some heart-led conversations, some deep dives into what they're doing for the world and to help others, and also just some transparent conversations about childhood, about the power of staying young in our adult years and days, especially in this day and age. And I'm glad for you all joining in with us on this conversation. Today's guest, she's a powerhouse. She has she has lived a variety of lives and interwoven them into the work she does now. She's a certified life coach, business relationship coach, author, speaker. She's really impacting and helping people step into their truth and overcoming limiting beliefs, strengthening their resolve through mindset and practical applications and tools and elevation, uh, and really understanding what I'm excited about today is imprint and this we all have been imprinted one way or another in our lives, and today's guest is really going to break that down and shed some light for all of us to step more into authenticity. So today's guest, Dena Breslin. How are you, my friend on the East Coast?
I'm great, James. I'm so honored and excited to be here. I love the idea of playground. It makes me think of my younger self, my 3-year-old, 4-year-old self, and I'm ready to have some fun with you.
I love that. For me, it's my 7-year-old self. That's my sweet spot. So
Mm.
I love it. I love it. Uh, yes, thank you for having me, and thank you for tuning in from just north of Philly. Is that correct? North of
Yep,
Philly,
Northwest. Yep.
northwest of Philly.
Mm.
Excellent. In
Yeah.
in Rocky Balboa town, as we say back in the
Yes.
day.
Yes.
I I rode many races on the Schuylkill River in Philly.
Yes, as
Right.
did I. Just a
Yeah.
few, not as many as you
Yeah.
when I was rowing
There we go.
my freshman year. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Let's dance, Dina. Let's dance. So, um, why don't you just give a little bit of an overview of who you are, just from your perspective. I did my intro, my
Yeah,
shtick, but let's hear from Dina herself
sure.
and what you're doing this day to be of service to the greater collective.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. So I have had a beautiful interwoven career path, and it comes mostly from being afraid of going to medical school. I shied away from going full on to medical school, and I took a turn and ended up in pharmaceutical sales, where I had the most amazing experience right out of college with Hoffman LaRoche, which was one of the foremost companies that was leading the HIV world. And so I was fortunate enough to be in a bioscience realm with a bio degree, and I was able to speak that language, which I loved it. And after about 4.5 years, I realized I was called to do something more, which was actually practice medicine. Um, so I became a physician assistant, and I did that for a handful of years, which I absolutely loved. Again, I was in a space where nobody practiced gastroenterology, no PAs practiced gastroenterology, and I was one of the first to do that, and really humbled and grateful to have that opportunity. I was taught by the best um, here in Pennsylvania, and from there, I had 3 children pretty quickly. And so I had wanted to stay at home with them, and I was fortunately able to do that. And while I was at home, I got sort of reintroduced to the idea of sales again, and I decided to work from home and have a side hustle. It wasn't called hustle back then, like a side gig. The gig
Right.
economy really wasn't a thing until recently. But anyway, so I did that just as a means to stay home with them and get them off to school. And lo and behold, 16 years later, I built a couple of really powerful, amazing teams of women in the direct sales space. And I didn't go back to medicine yet. And so along the way, I was really good at doing what I did. Like, you know how we all can be good at doing what we do. But
Yes.
the idea of being influential or a leader or was sort of escaped me. And so along the way, I really became a student of leadership and understanding the power and the psychology of influence. I also hired a life coach because I had been in 15 years of therapy for up until that time. And I thought, what the heck's a life coach? So in 2010, I took that on, and she was amazing and changed my life. And I said, oh my goodness, I want to do that. I want to be certified in that. And I think that I could bring that to my team. And that's what I did in 12 and 14, and certified by a couple of different accredited bodies, accredited schools. And because that's important to me. And then I took that to the team, and the team exploded, and we just had a lot of fun. And as of late, I did have clients, slowly but surely, private clients, slowly but surely. And then as of late, I became more of a speaker and an author and sort of a thought leader on how do we understand the brain, the neural science of mindset and past imprints, and how do we actually rewire the brain? And because we can, and there's science behind that, and I love that. That I'm a science person, I'm a research person. So that's what I do. I have private clients. I do groups. I do masterminds with folks all over the world. And I absolutely love it. And what we primarily focus on is our brain. And then how do we then, once we understand that and we come back to our own truth and our own self, and then how do we become a better influencer of other people's brains?
I love this.
Because we're most of the folks I have, most of the clients I have are women, but I do have men. But I have what I approach it as is you're a whole individual. You are a whole person. So while people may come to me for business per se, or career transition per se, or I had someone come to me for weight loss, it's about the whole individual. That person's a mother, that person's a
That's right.
wife, that person's a daughter, that person's a friend, that person's a career person, a team leader. So we address all of that.
Yeah. I love that. And I do the same thing with my clients as well. It's the person underneath the brand is the true brand. And how do we all ourselves understand all the different facets, all the different responsibility, nuances of each other so that each of us can run optimally for whatever it is we want to do in life.
For sure.
What I'd love to plant a flag on is truth. So I know when we met a few weeks back and we were talking, you've used the word truth. That is a word that I use a lot, and other people use why, the why behind, or the purpose. And for me, it's truth. Stepping into one's truth. That is the story in my book of my journey to understanding, getting back to that core truth of who I am and who I was supposed to be. For you, what is someone's truth in terms of what you do, Dena?
To me, it's sort of an amalgam of what they were when they were younger, who they were, what characteristics, personality traits, things that prior to age 5 resonated with the child. And then it's an amalgam of that plus what is your highest self calling. And you could call it highest self, you could call it God, you could call it, higher power, source, whatever. And it's this coming together, this convergence of at the moment that they come to me, we break old story, we break old truth, old beliefs, old patterns. We get back to what the core is. I like to say I'm a mind surgeon, and I jackhammer up the old stuff, sweep it away, and then we sort of replace it. But it's really about who they are right now, what experiences they've had. Can we pull together and weave together all the aha moments that they've had to come to this truth that can serve them today and forward? And it's a real connection to God. To me, it's a real connection to God.
Yeah, that ascension, if you will, to self-actualization,
Yeah,
or however you want to label it, so to speak.
sure.
It's interesting that for me, I look at that journey just like you said. It's going back to that purity of our younger self before we started to become programmed and lose sight of that pure essence. And then as we journey, though, that self-actualization, if you will, is also really getting back to that pure essence, really, which
Yeah, we're coming home. We're coming
exactly,
home. Yeah.
we're coming home. It's a full circle
Mm-hmm.
journey back to that that essence. And for me, I feel getting back to that is the truth in terms of how I show up in the world, and what I share with my community is that self-actualization is just the full circle journey back to that adult understanding of that purity as it relates to their younger self, and bringing that now hand in hand with them as they walk forward in adulthood.
Yeah, and the way that I simplify that is really about awakening to the voice inside the head. So those are some of the exercises that we do. One real simple one is who's talking. You know, if it's not our true self, and we can tell our true self in a couple of ways, it's our ego self, and our ego is mostly the imprint and all the experiences that we've had along the way that have and they've served us. Come on now.
Sure.
They've all served us, but and they've allowed us to go, down certain paths in our life, and that path may have been a rabbit hole. Now, and it gets us, it could get us into trouble, and it can keep us in suffering for far too long. And basically the journey home is the journey back to an enlightened self, a more light-filled, hope-filled, joy-filled, love-filled human.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because the title of my book is All In With Love, and then it's my journey to the hero within, and the hero within is that essence of little Jimmy, is getting back to that coming back home essence as an adult. Dena, with truth, so obviously there's obstacles. I want to talk imprints, and that's a big part of the work that you do in the world, and helping people create awareness and understanding, and then perhaps overcoming them or rewiring them so that it serves where they're going on their journey. Let's talk about imprints and what you see with the clients that you work with.
Yeah. So we know through child psychology that around age 4 or 5, we develop our ego self as a way to actually separate from our parents. And during that time from 5 to 10, sometimes 5 to 12, that ego is like I don't know if you want to say a clay surface, which has imprints from other people, clearly our parents or the people who are raising us, teachers, kids in school, neighbors, etc. And we're very impressionable during that time. And so, it's a joy-filled time, right? And it can be a very confusing time depending on one's childhood. And so that's what I mean when I say imprint. An imprint is an experience that has been a thought that then is locked in with a really strong feeling, whether it's trauma or joy. whether it's confusion or clarity, but it's locked in with a feeling, and then it's laid down into the subconscious mind. The subconscious being way back in the brain. So the frontal lobe is where our thoughts happen. Our amygdala, or mostly reptilian area behind the frontal lobe, is where the seat of emotions, and then behind that is the hippocampus, the seat of memory. So even you could talk to a yogi and they would tell you that the subconscious is not even it's not even the brain, it's just energy, and it's collective, and we all have it. But I'm clearly working with the one person who shows up in front of me, and I'm working on their subconscious concreted imprints that over a period of years, some, kids that come to me, or I should say some adults that come to me, when we go back as far back as childhood, it takes a few weeks to get to that. And all of a sudden they're awake and they remember that they were molested and that they didn't remember before. So, that's obviously on a very traumatic scale. But they might remember something else that maybe isn't as traumatic, but it takes time because those imprints are deeply rooted, and things layer on top of them as we grow older, decade by decade.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I do have a science background, but it's in a different realm than that, because I'm very science based. The interesting thing is, for me, coming at it from, let's say, a non-clinical approach, or that side of the street, coming from it from just a creative standpoint. When I sat down to write the book, my story, those imprints, I've talked about this, where it doesn't, like, even getting back to write my life story, even getting back to write the childhood arena of the book, for example, it took time. It took time to sit, and I likened it where I would creatively open these doorways, and I would be like, oh, and I'd walk through this doorway of a memory, let's say, and I would write that. And then, the creative alchemy that happens is all of a sudden there'd be like two more doorways that pop up that you completely forgot about. And so when I revisited specifically that part of my life, it was very similar, whether we call them imprints or doorways. They were little transitions of walking into some stuff that was buried deep in there. And it wasn't, by any means, it wasn't all traumatic things. It was some amazing life experiences and memories and things that also enriched me beyond measure because of that process. And I just wanted to offer out there too that, I know in the work we do, we always talk about writing and journaling, and there's so much value and just revisiting that and writing, because there are things that we can uncover through that process as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just away myself for sort of a little mini retreat, and I was doing that work myself. I was going deeper, doing that work, and you cannot. So your listeners are, just let's describe this to them. In our frontal lobe, where those thoughts are, because I will bring back the science. There's so much thoughts going on, so many thoughts going on. It's really hard to have that aha awareness that you said about going through a doorway, just keeping it in here. You'll have it, and then it's fleeting. But the writing it out actually then maps it for you a little bit better, a lot better, actually. And you can get to the truth so much simpler, quicker, and with ease and joy. You can see things that are real, and you can then parse out, like, okay, no, this is not true. Or this may not have happened that way. Now I can see it more clearly.
Yeah.
Or, you know what, this did happen to me. Now what am I going to do with this? How can I forgive this thing? Because, it's back here. It's way back here, and we may forget it. We may repress it. We may transmute it into a different story until we put it out there, and then we can actually do something with it and heal it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Good point.
that is very, very powerful. The act of writing, it's almost like it gives birth to the thought or gives birth to it. It's the act of creation,
That's it.
truly,
That's
which
it. And in our lives, like as adults, 30s and 40s and 50s, I mean, we are just consumed with living and doing. We rarely get the time, make the time, take the time, understand why it's important to do it, to actually journal, to meditate, where the thoughts can be more observed rather than owned. They're just
right.
observed. So
Yeah.
I didn't know what I didn't know when I was 30 and 40. My goodness, if I had the coach, I just posted something like, I am the coach that I needed. But gosh, if I had a coach like this when I was 30, seriously, it'd be a different life.
Well, and then that begs the question, I'll speak for myself. I don't know if my 30-year-old egoic self would be welcoming a coach
Yeah.
or accepting all of that as well. I don't.
Well, I mean, it depends on the person. I mean, I was legit knocking on therapist doors. I
Mm,
was knocking on people's doors. I knew something was up. I just, and I needed help,
mm.
So I'm so excited and so passionate about the work you do because it's very similar to the work I do. And this is how we change the planet. This is how we do it, through the reconstruction of people's true selves and bring them back to love through forgiveness. And they become more healthy on the inside. They vibrate differently with energetically in a more healthy way, which means that everybody around them is more healthy, which means that the
Mm.
ripple effect is health and love and more joy and joy. And this is just, we're doing our little part.
Yeah, because that's like the third part of this sequence. The truth. We talked to truth. We talked the power of imprints and so forth. And then, as you said, to quote you, was, and then how in turn do you make people influencers so they go out and influence others to, operate at a higher frequency or lead with love and all of that. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that because this is what I'm passionate. I mean, I'm passionate about everything, and I'm passionate about facilitating a change. One person, one
One
conversation
reader. Yeah.
at a
One
time.
reader of your book, one
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
conversation. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, it's
Do
beautiful.
are people? You know, there, you mentioned the act of forgiveness, and I talked about ownership in our conversation before. That sense of ownership and acceptance, and like for someone to go out and facilitate a change, I think there has to be some of that. There has to be either they're stepping more into their authentic selves, their truth. Obviously, when truth lands, trust begins, as I like to say, and this kind of new path that they're treading or walking. And yet, not everyone is a born leader. You said it yourself, right?
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
how
Yeah.
how does Dena get her clients in a position to go out now and be of service to elevate the people around themselves?
Mm. Well, I feel like once a person can see their own growth, because what we do is we live in these moments, the forest, and I want them to see the trees. So I help them come out often so that they could see the 30,000
Yes,
foot view.
right.
And once they recognize their growth and the wins and their power and purpose on the planet and why they're here, once they can see that, they feel more confident.
Mm.
They feel different. They feel after a period of a few weeks, they feel different. Their energy is different. And then from there, then we say, okay, trust, and absolutely got to have trust as the foundation, right? So how do we build trust now that we trust ourselves? We are leaders. We're all leaders.
We
You
are.
have to be a leader of one before you can be a leader of
True,
any.
true.
So how we lead ourselves is really the key. And really just it's about reframing, actually breaking down, reestablishing the foundation, restructuring the architecture of that person. Not all the way, just tweaks. These are tweaks. We're fortifying the walls, the windows. We're, reframing things, built on their values and their passions and their beliefs and their desires. And then now we can see it in other people because we know how to come out to the 30,000-foot view for ourselves. And we can, like, you're at a work meeting and you're sitting around a table, and there might be some kind of trepidation in the meeting. There might be some kind of animosity in the meeting. There might be some kind of condescension in the meeting. There might be some kind of disconnect in the meeting, right? And you don't think you have a voice. Well, all that work that we've been doing together reinstates your true voice. And you're not angry, you're not cantankerous, you're not sarcastic, you're not sharp, you're just real. And so that can happen in the boardroom, that can happen in your family around the dinner table. It's powerful stuff, and it just starts small.
Yeah.
It just starts in small ways. But guess what? You're 100% correct. This can change bigger pictures. Like, how do we look at other ethnicities? Were we infused with an imprint of I don't want to say ignorance, racism, what have you? Can we break down those old stories? Yes, we can. Can we be different in our communities? Can we embrace people who don't look like us or think like us? Yes, we can.
Mm-hmm. And let's do that. Well, actually, not let's do that. I think one of the gateways to doing that effectively is getting back to that pure sense of ourselves when we were younger, where we didn't judge, where we lived with zero judgment, zero expectations. And I think that is why the work of the inner child is very powerful. Mm-hmm. And I say that from a lens of, I don't want to say there's a misconception, because that's not true, but there's out there, inner child, a lot of people associate inner child with trauma. Mm-hmm. Inner child with, I got to heal the inner child. Mm-hmm. And yes, and there's a place for that, absolutely. And also just getting back to the characteristics of a child is so powerful. It doesn't have to be traumatic work. It doesn't have to be the dark, deep dives into the dark nights of the soul to figure out and come out the other side. But it can also be just getting back to that beautiful essence. What are those characteristics? Like you were just saying, like taking those characteristics and applying it to understanding race, or applying it to having a healthy relationship, or being a business coach. That can serve us so powerfully.
Right. And what adulting is hard work. Okay. And yet it doesn't have to be hard. Yeah. It can be filled with experiences that light you up. Just like when we were 5, 6 years old, where we have a sense of awe and wonder, and we're looking for surprise. We're expecting surprise.
I love that. So
yeah.
Tell me about little D on the playground back in the day. What was she like?
Wow, she's a dancer.
Ah.
So I grew up in Rosetto. I spent a lot of time in Rosetto, Pennsylvania. And if anyone has ever read Outliers from Malcolm Gladwell, he dedicates the first chapter to Rosetto, Pennsylvania, because they studied the Italians and why they outlived the people in the surrounding areas. Especially in this particular town. And so when I was little, there were a lot of Italian elders around. And they always would want to squeeze your cheeks and, "Quando si bella," and they'd say that, often. And we'd play music. I remember sitting in my grandparents' living room, and there would be 20 adult, Italians sitting around while I was 3, 4, dancing around, jumping off furniture, just to anything and everything. And that is who I am today. I mean, like, there is no question about it. If anyone who knows me knows that I'm filled with music, filled with helping that vibrational energy of music and song and life and movement. And so incidentally, because that's who I was, it took a long time for me to understand how to be still. So my imprint was, the more I did, the more I saved. In this case, my parents, right? So, or whom, my parents, we'll say, we'll stop it there. But the more I did, the imprint then changed from doing and dancing and lightheartedness to doing became heavy. And it became adultified at age 10. And so anyway, I still kept doing, like there was this movement, like a little puppy and see me, see me, see me.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for me to be still. And that's an art. And when we can infuse that regularly to our lives, where we're still, as I mentioned, so many times we don't take the time. Yes, we're going to the gym. Yes, we're, going to the gym and we're doing our workouts and this, that, and the other thing, but it's not necessarily still time to get back in touch with our truth. And that is one of the most beautiful things, is like really to recall that all those childlike. I was so curious. I would follow my father around. I remember he was, my dad's a doctor and my grandfather was a physician. So I would go to the ER and stay with my dad, and sleep over and, observe what he was doing in the ER. He also was a carpenter and a painter, my father. So I was just like a sponge, just soaking it all in. And so curiosity was huge for me. I love to giggle, love to laugh. And one of the other things about me was I was always a philanthropist at heart. I remember wanting to do, we would get these things in the mail. And I don't know if you remember this, James, where you would get this stuff in the mail to do like a carnival in your backyard, and the money that was raised, you'd send to St. Jude's Hospital. You remember this?
No, actually, I don't.
I mean, like, they still use the balloon.
Yeah.
I remember that
The
that
Shriners.
brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Shriners was another one, but I remember wanting to put carnivals together and having people come and pay money to do this, this, and this, and the money that we would collect, we could donate to those less fortunate. I mean, I remember all that. Like, it was like so crystal clear when I would sit still long enough and think on it.
And here you are,
Here I am.
embodying her now, and
Yeah.
how you show up in the world. That's amazing. Dena, I would like to, as we close up here, I just have a couple of questions I'd like to ask you as it relates to my story, and specifically the book, as I, went searching for my younger self. In the book, I talk about, I go into the jungle of my own mind. I go into this search for who am I, like who I was, who I thought I would be, who do I want to be moving forward, and it's told in a way where I go searching for the fountain of youth, Ponce de Leon, and I'm on this journey. And when I arrive at this mythical place and this tree of life, to be reborn, if you will, and to begin my trek out of the jungle, there were four main compass points that little Jimmy, that reconnection, instilled in me, and how I operate now, how that navigated me out of the jungle now navigates me as I still walk forward in life with decisions, with affiliations, with what I'm doing and so forth. And those four components are truth, freedom, artistry, and intimacy.
Hmm.
And I'd like to ask you, how does how would Dena embrace your Dena meaning you, the adult, embrace intimacy in her life?
Hmm. So when you're a machine and you're doing and doing too much so every one of those pillars needs to be taken into consideration in its own space time. And so you can't have too much of creativity at the expense of intimacy. So I was creating for 20 years of
Mm,
my life and lacking, actually didn't even understand intimacy actually. um and a lot of times intimacy is, and it starts within. It really is the time you take to get to know yourself.
mm,
But intimacy then is then sharing your vulnerabilities with those around you,
mhm.
in order to build bridge, to connect. Intimacy can be with self, and it can be with a romantic partner, a child, um,
Absolutely.
a parent. um, And like I say, when you're too much in, I don't know, headspace and you're not in heart space, it's very difficult to be
Yeah.
intimate.
Yeah. Yeah. I likened it as almost being present,
Hmm.
to the art of being is really being intimate with the present moment, and
That's
getting
great.
getting back to, little Jimmy would just be intimate on the lawn for hours,
Hmm.
just combing through looking for four-leaf clovers and being present, and so
Hmm.
that's something that came to me on my journey, and looking for those intimate moments that make up the larger moments, right? The moments between the moments,
Yeah,
and yeah,
I
yeah,
love that. The being present. And like I say, when you're doing too much, you're not present. Um, it's very hard to be intimate.
mhm.
That's
Yeah, you got
beautiful.
that right. All right,
Yes.
my dear. Last question I
Wow.
have for you
Oh,
today.
bring it. Bring
Bring it. One
it.
more. This is my standard closing question.
Uh-oh.
Dun, 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 dun. Put you on the hot spot. All right.
Okay.
Uh, in the book, I talk about inevitably in all of our lives, there is a doorway that we walk through to adulthood.
Mm.
Some sooner than later, but it happens, and we all walk through it. If you could go back to that point in time or that time frame,
Mm.
knowing what you know now, what would your younger self say to you as you went through that doorway on your life travels into real world?
I think um, I think oh, that's a good one. I don't know that I really felt like I was heading into the adult world until I brought my son into the world. Because I was just out there loving life and playing and doing whatever I chose to do up until I was 30. Um,
Hmm.
and but when I had this human that I was responsible for, that really made me a true adult, I felt. And if I could go back, as you were saying it, my heart just started to flutter. I think it was, I really just think it was, don't be afraid. It was so much fear. It was so much fear.
Hmm.
And it just cast an unbelievable shadow on the joy of the first 30 years. Yeah. If I could just remind my younger self that God had my back and higher power had my back, and that all will be well.
Hmm. It's beautiful.
Um, yeah. Don't be
Thank you for
so
that.
afraid.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, I know little Dena's sitting there next to you now. That I'm not sure. Yeah, the question is when we sign off from this conversation, I'm sure the audience is going to wonder if you're going to start dancing on some furniture. We're gonna-
That's it. That's what I do when no one's looking.
I know exactly right. Dena,
Yeah.
thank you so much for this conversation
Thank you,
today. Where
James.
where can we direct some people that may be interested in finding out more about you?
Very simply, just go to Dena Breslin on Facebook and friend me, send me a message. It's the simplest way, and I love my Facebook. The way that I've created is you really, if you scroll through it, you really get to know me. You
Perfect.
can go to LinkedIn as well if you wish, but Facebook is really the
Sure.
place to kind of see a little bit more about me and then connect. And you can go to my website and sign up for a discovery call.
Perfect. We'll put that in the show notes as
Thank
well.
you.
And thank you. Thank you for a nice, beautiful conversation on truth, on dancing, because I love
I
dancing as
love
well.
dancing.
Dancing, a little bit about imprints. And we all have a role, or we all have a responsibility to influence,
Yeah.
to raise the bar. So,
And just a little note to you. Thank you for your, friendship and your gush of love to the planet through your book and all that the hard work, the deep work that you did for that. I mean, it's resonating to many, and it will continue. So thank you.
thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. To our community at large, thank you for tuning in once again. Join me on the next time where we have some beautiful discussions and some more journeys to the hero within. My book, All In With Love, My Journey to the Hero Within, is available worldwide now. It's over 50,000 booksellers across the planet.
Yeah.
And it's a story of a man getting back to his younger self, the trials and tribulations and interesting life experiences and all of that to to be of service for the readers of the world. So check it out. Thank you, Dena. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you all on the next episode.